Spray pumps are one of the most critical parts of any spray operation. There are a variety of pumps available on the market, ranging from short shaft varieties, long shaft varieties, fan-driven, hydraulically driven. No matter which pump is used, it is imperative to keep it serviced and in good condition. The pump is comprised of 9 main components: the body, the case, the backing plate, the impeller, the bearings, the shaft, the seal assembly, snap rings, and gaskets. In this video, we will be servicing an Agronautics 65200 series pump. The first step in disassembling the pump is to mark the case to the backing plate, and then the backing plate to the body. Make the marks so they are easily identified and won't wash off when cleaned. A center punch usually will do the trick. Once marked, remove the 6 bolts that hold the case to the rest of the assembly. Once removed, you may need to use a soft blow hammer or a small standard flat screwdriver to separate them. Now that we have separated the case, inspect the impeller for debris. It is not uncommon, and most likely, in fact, you will find some plastic pieces or stones or some other debris that are lodged into the internal impeller vanes. Remove the gasket. Next, remove the safety nut. You may need a large breaker bar to break it loose. Sometimes Loctite is used if it is an original factory installed pump. Some pumps will have an acorn nut and a washer. Some may have a normal stainless steel nut with a stainless steel split washer. Next, using a chain wrench, turn the impeller counterclockwise to break the torque. Spin the impeller off of the shaft. Just a side note that the Transland short shaft pumps have impellers that are pressed on, and they use a woodruff key and a nut holding them in place. With the impeller out of the way, remove the 4 bolts holding the body to the backing plate. Again, ensure that you have marked the parts before separation. Now it's time to separate the body from the back plate. Once removed, inspect the seal assembly. Make a note as to the current position of the seal. Using a punch, slowly tap the stationary seal out of the backing plate. This piece is made out of very brittle porcelain or silicon carbide and may crack or shatter when removed from the housing. Next, remove the large snap ring that holds the bearings and shaft into place. It is important to remove this snap ring, as you can damage the assembly if it is forgotten. With the large snap ring removed, press the shaft out of the body from back to front. If it feels like it's locking up on the press, if you're using a press, stop what you are doing and investigate. Some pump assemblies are built with the shaft being pressed from front to back. If you are unsure which way to press, the schematic should be available on the manufacturer's website. The Root Supreme long shafts and Transland long shaft pumps are pressed differently, the different direction. Again, we are overhauling an Agronautics 65200 series pump in this video. Press the shaft out of the bearings. We will now use the shaft to press the remaining bearings out of the body. Press this bearing out from front to back. Once removed, press the bearing off the shaft. With all parts cleaned and inspected, we can now begin the reassembly process. Press the rear bearings into place until it is seated. Secure with large snap ring. Press the front bearings on the shaft until it is seated against the small snap ring. Press the shaft end bearing into the body from front to back. It is imperative to press the shaft in straight, as it can damage the case and/or bearings if not centered. Again, if you feel like it is locking up, stop and investigate. Now that we have the body, shaft, and bearings installed, it's time to talk about preloading. The act of pressing the shaft and bearings into the body is in itself putting a lot of preload on the bearings. It is very important that they are not overloaded. Spin the shaft and feel for resistance. If there is a fair amount of drag while turning the shaft due to the hard pressing it takes to secure all the bearings into position, use a soft blow hammer and tap the shaft from back to front, basically the opposite direction you used from using the press. The shaft should turn freely with a very slight amount of drag, hardly noticeable, but significantly less than what the drag you felt just after using the press and pressing things into position. This indicates that you have your inner and outer race and balls in line, and you won't have premature bearing failure in the future. We can move on to the seal assembly. The seal assembly is comprised of a stationary seal pressed into the backing plate and a rotary seal pressed onto the shaft. As stated earlier, the seals are very brittle and very fragile. Beware, it is possible to install the seal upside down. The top of the seal is perfectly flat, while there is a small groove in the bottom of the seal. Face this groove down towards the backing plate. The seal kit provides a cardboard circle gasket between the two sealing surfaces. Use this as a protective barrier when pressing the seal into the housing. Ensure the seal is seated properly and flat in the housing. You need to make 100% sure that that stationary seal is pressed flat against the milled faces of the backing. Next, push the backing plate over the shaft and onto the body. Be sure to use caution, as the shaft can chip and spoil the seal. Be sure to line up the marks you made before disassembly. Bolt the backing plate to the body. The seal kit will likely provide a cupped stainless steel washer over the spring. Remove the washer and discard. With the backplate, seal, and body assembled together, you can now press on the rotary seal. Ensure that both sealing surfaces are perfectly clean and dry. Press the seal down gently and smoothly until it is seated. If you press too hard when you install the seal and it slams into the stationary seal, it's a good possibility you've cracked or chipped or damaged the shaft seal. It's probably a good idea to slowly remove that and check it and start again. It's important that you gently push that on without any damage. Once the seals are together, place the spring onto the rotary seal. It's a good idea to apply a small amount of grease where the spring contacts the base of the impeller. You'll see a little groove where the spring will be seated, and as you spin the impeller into place, the grease will help the spring from catching as you compress the impeller down onto the shaft. Using a chain wrench, tighten the impeller down. Remember that on some pumps the impeller is pressed on and not spun on, using a woodruff key to hold it in place. Install the washers and lock nut. Use a fair bit of torque when you are tightening the lock nut. Use of blue Loctite on the lock nut is advisable as well. The blue Loctite is a removable strength Loctite. It's not as powerful as the red Loctite, and it assures that it won't vibrate loose. Next, we'll install the case to the backing plate. There is a gasket that fits between the mating surfaces. It is advisable to spray a gasket with Loctite high-tack gasket sealant. Line up your marks and bolt the two halves together using the star pattern tightening sequence. It is advisable to use blue Loctite on these bolts as well. Get to know your spray system, because without a good spray system, your airplane is going to be on the ground, AOG. Good luck, guys.